The album doesn't seem to give itself much room for likability or even mature discussion. Most of it comes down to being entirely convinced that it's saying something profound, when in actuality it's just going wiki wiki woo woo wiki wiki woo.
There are so many ear-stabbing snare drums. It is annoying as fuck.
The vocabulary in his music is basically equivalent to what you'd find in like a 9th grade English paper.
Ugh, he's lost his mind. He's just off the deep end.
It's kind of hard to deny that overall his actual rapping is just pretty average, like painfully average actually.
One of the most tiring records, and it's the most tiring record I heard this month, primarily due to how bloody long it is, and it does not reward from that running time at all.
Let's be honest, if it wasn't for those videos and all the weird things that he gets up to, I don't think we would even know about him at all.
Hi, things aren't going too well. Thankfully the owner of this shed here was a big fan of the mixtape, so I've landed on my feet a little bit. Big regrets. I definitely wouldn't have called one of the songs #MePoo. That was just really insensitive, and I kind of got the complaints. What would I have done differently? More cowbell, probably. Yeah, more cowbell. Where am I gonna go from here? Probably just gonna hang low for a little bit longer and just we'll see where the road takes me. While I've left a lot of yous waiting for this video, whether it be the hiatus I've taken without actually saying to anybody, or maybe when I actually announced I was going to do the video back in a Twitter poll about a year ago, you've probably been waiting a fair amount of time, though not nearly as long as fans of The Cure have been waiting for a new Cure album. 2008 was the last time that Robert Smith and Co dropped something. People have been waiting very patiently, and considering the fact that they are going to be dropping a new album hopefully some point this year according to different interviews that I've read, what better time to kind of talk about The Cure's omnipresent and diverse catalogue of music. As much as I'd like to offer some comprehensive coverage of the band, all the way from their humble beginnings to now, it'd be just a whole video in of itself to do, but you're basically the essentials that you should know. The band formed in Crawley, England in 1978, and The Cure just from the get-go haven't really known one stable form. Head honcho and creative lead Robert Smith has just taken inspiration from some of his big idols, people like Bowie, just kind of taking on his whole trait as well of being a musical chameleon of sorts, just shedding off different outfits whenever the occasion suited, which has just resulted in what has easily been seen as one of the most adventurous and rich discographies in musical history. Simultaneously the kings of goth as well as the enthusiastic poppy brats strutting about with glee. It's no real shock how the band have managed to captivate generations upon generations with their work. It's going to be fun covering this considering the fact there's not really a unanimous best Cure album, so I'm Liam the Music Reviewer, and today we're going to be ranking every Cure album from worst to best, and yeah, let's just get started. A ranked list where the worst album on it isn't the most recent one. I really am paving the way here, but I won't really be paving the way when it comes to talking about The Cure's self-titled 2004 album, because I really don't have much to say about it. Apparently Robert Smith thought these were some of the hardest songs he'd ever written, hardest and heaviest, but he also thought a lot of passion went into the recording process, and hey, for all we know maybe there was a lot of passion put in, but the results don't really reflect that. What we get is just something that is like the epitome of lifeless. I usually do bring up runtimes in these videos for my ranked videos, and spoiler alert, I'm going to be doing the exact same thing with this Cure video, but it's my video, I'll do what I want, and at 50 minutes long, not really a huge stretch in terms of how long an album could run for, but those 50 minutes just, they drag on, they go at a snail's pace. Ross Robinson was on kind of producer credits here, and he's worked with Slipknot and Korn back in the noughties, and I believe in the kind of late 90s for Korn. I just don't think it benefits him at all, and I do think it kind of, when it came to Korn and Slipknot, he did what was right there. It just doesn't feel like the right outfit for them. It's just ill-fitting. The angst just feels so kind of fake, and it really shouldn't be hard for the band to channel those same emotions and just manage to encapsulate that same kind of just cacophony in a way that just has defined some of the most noisy, angry albums that he'd put up to that point. And a song like Never is just pathetic, really. Like, Robert Smith, if you're watching this, hi, this shit hurt, but like not in a nice, like, masochist way. It wasn't good. It just, call me, I'm worried. Now, their latest album, I could easily put 413 Dream this low down on the list, just because I'm filling my hipster quota and I just want to look really cool by putting their new stuff on, being like their old stuff was way better. But I can't really do that when it comes to The Cure anyway, because a good 3/4 of their discography is quite good at the very least. So the whole reason that I've put it here is because it's pretty bad. Is there much to be salvaged from it? I would say the opener, Underneath the Stars, is a pretty nice way to kick things off, not rushing itself too much and letting some juicy guitar lines while injecting some lovely atmosphere into the plump little dish. Sadly though, this starts like a slice from a gourmet restaurant, while the rest of what is on offer here is a slice of the Cure cattle, reheated and served to you under the guise of it being some fresh good food for our new age. The Scream has a moment that just unintentionally made me burst out laughing the first time I heard it. Tracks like The Perfect Boy feel like Smith was on autopilot in the lyrical department, and the only one is clearly trying to tap into Smith's romantic veins, but at this point every vein just seems to be running pretty dry, and what we're left with is a love song that hobbles by, really. The album itself could be described as such, The Cure hopping by without any reinvention or dazzling repurposing of what had come before. The band just feels uptight and prototypical, something that, even when certain sounds were arguably starting to become a bit too permanent for the group, couldn't be applied to them even then. Sadly, 413 is the run of the litter. It's running on breadcrumbs. It's just lacking that spectrum of emotion that gives the Cure albums, even usually at their worst, just so much life and energy. It's just not here at all, and just as it stands, the best work that the Cure put out in the noughties past the year 2000 was a Blink-182 song. So you can take from that what you will. So when it came to the idea of this ranked video, I knew fine well it wouldn't be a quick turnaround. I knew that I still had quite a few albums I had to check out. Basically everything after Wish was kind of unknown territory to me. I went on stuff like Rating Music and that to kind of find out what I should check out first and whatnot. And apparently Wild Mood Swings is seen as being the worst of the lot. It made quite a lasting impression on me. I did, like, when it came to, I think it was some point late last year, maybe even like February this year, I was like, okay, I'll give it a go, I'll see what it's like, because I need to actually do this video. And I just cannot fathom how this is seen as being worse than 413 Dream or their self-titled effort. It's got some big flaws, and yeah, I can see why some people would have a distaste for it, but if you think this is their worst, having listened to the other two albums we've talked about so far, you are bad, and you should feel bad, and you should turn this video off after it's done. In a way, I get it. It'd been 4 years since Wish, one of the band's most beloved albums, so fans were both waiting for a fair wee while in Cure time, considering the near annual release cycle up to that point, and they were expecting something just as good. So also they were just given something that by all accounts had the most commercial weight to it than anything they'd put out previously, no doubt due to the success of Wish in the sales department. And this just kind of results in a messy album, I'm not gonna lie. not least behind the scenes as members Paul Thompson and Boris Williams left the band, along with Simon Gallup taking a vacation due to health issues. It left Smith and Perry Belmonte being the only two permanent members for a long stretch, constantly juggling new members to the point where Smith has admitted basically that he couldn't keep track of all the different drummers as they changed on a weekly basis. Now I did say people were big old dumb babies for listing this as their least favourite, and while I can see why they do so, just Mint Car alone with its peppy spirit, lovable Cure charm sprinkled lyrics, and a hard-hitting song topic, that just justifies Wild Mood Swings being above self-titled and 413 Dream, just no question about it. The rest is, yeah, admittedly, a mixed bag, what of the unjustifiably stretched out runtime really working against it. They really hit or miss the 13th, which personally I like, but The Cure taking a stab at salsa could be the concoction that pushes you over the edge, and yet again we get another Stone Cold classic opener with Want. This is just going to be a hard pill to swallow because unlike the other two albums, it's not so black and white with its quality. At the time it'd be easy to say, and maybe it would hold some merit as well, to declare that The Cure's career was dead in the water. They effectively had killed themselves, but if you know your chronology, like even if you have the most basic knowledge, you know The Cure are still around, they're going to be making music, and you know they ended up making more music because we've already talked about some of it, but thankfully they're still around, and it wasn't like the first time we had like this shaky moment of uncertainty going on, which is a good transition into this next album, though thankfully it was a bit more of an experimental kind of album to come out of this kind of like uncertainty, and was just overall good or a-ish. It's kind of baffling to think that in like the 5 decades that The Cure have been a thing, Robert Smith has never decided to go off to make a solo album, and The Top is kind of considered like a pseudo solo album because of the fact that Robert Smith just did so much on this record, and basically did everything other than playing the drums and the kind of small usage of the saxophone throughout. And while we got Japanese Whispers in between Pornography and The Top, which is by the way home to the masterclass of synth pop that is Let's Go to Bed. What we got on The Top was a lot more, like just a lot different to what had came before, and kind of saw The Cure dipping their toes into psychedelic rock. Considering how disastrous this record could have ended up being, there's far more working in The Top's favour than against it. Just think about it, you've got the top 3 Cure opener contenders, Shake Dog Shake, the delightfully wonderful The Caterpillar with its impossible to imitate chanting, like, is it like cat 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 cat? I can kind of do it a little bit. Most of the time I just end up starting. And then you've also got the threatening woodwind and drumming of Wailing Wall, which just induces this thick, impenetrable atmosphere. Moments like these are indisputably the peak of the record, but at times it can feel like Smith is getting lost in his own oddities, and as a result, cuts like Piggy in the Mirror and Banana Fish Bones just don't feel they're like the same level as everyone else, especially Smith's vocals in the former, which are meant to be eccentric but come off more goofy than they do melodramatic. Smith went on to say that he thinks The Top is patchy, and the critical reaction did take a toll on his confidence, but I think it would be fallacious to say the album doesn't hold some merit. It acts as a decent enough experimentation, even if thankfully Smith would go on to lead the band in a far friendlier route that would result in some of the best music of the 80s. But now that we're out of the deep sludge and we've wiped our boots on the pretty nice mat that was The Top, it is just astounding to know that the next 9 albums that we're going to talk about are like at the very least they're quite good, which is, I would say, unprecedented. Like, I cannot think of a single act that has that many like good albums in their kind of foray. But what about their earliest stuff? If all their latest stuff has landed here at the bottom, or most of it anyway, then where does their early stuff land? Or maybe even their earliest stuff? An act's debut album, more often than not, isn't totally indicative of the sound that they'll carry on through the rest of their career. And Free Imaginary Boys isn't any different, released in 1979. It is just pure, just concentrated post-punk. It fits under that banner so well. At a push, you could say there's like a sliver of new wave, but like if you know The Cure, you know that like post-punk wasn't really the big thing that they fit under. None of their albums usually just are one genre, but Free Imaginary Boys is just kind of maybe kind of shallow in the sense of genre variety, but it is in no ways like kind of like worse off for it. As far as debut albums go, Free Imaginary Boys probably lands in the top half, being an all-in-all entertaining and easy to listen to album. Clocking in at just over half an hour, this is one of a selected few Cure records that I'll just chuck on my way into work because of how compact it feels. And while I wouldn't go as far as saying it has a breakneck speed to it, it doesn't feel like much time passes at all from 10:15 Saturday night to meet hook, despite the fact over 20-minute lapses. The hooks on here are pretty good and offer a pop kind of sensibility in the way that they latch onto, which obviously will work in the band's favour thanks to their power of hindsight. The peaks in this regard have to be the aforementioned 10:15 Saturday night's drip, 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 drip and grinding halt. Unfortunately, while it's pleasant to listen to, I find Free Imaginary Boys kinda shallow, with there not being that much to chew on, in some moments like Subway Song undercutting themselves some annoying creative choices, and I'm talking about that jump scare bullshit at the end. It just it pisses me right off. This album is just the cider of Cure albums. Not much going on, but it's satisfying and goes down pretty smoothly. Most musicians wouldn't really admit what their least favourite album of theirs was. You know what kind of like the press cycle is like. Their best album is always the one they've just put out, so they'll go buy it. Robert Smith isn't most musicians. He's been very vocal about the fact that Free Imaginary Boys is the worst album they put out. I think a lot of that kind of comes just from the kind of lack of creative control they had over it. Though from that point on, every Cure album more or less was entirely theirs to make. Well, there's also kind of label pressure, as you have. They've signed to, I think they've signed to labels like Fiction and Geffen as well. But the creative control in terms of like what the music they were actually making was always theirs. From basically Free Imaginary Boys, just kind of onwards from Free Imaginary Boys. So in a way, it's still even kind of iconic in that sense that it was kind of corporately controlled Cure album, which is again very rare. And to this day, they've got no label. They just can kind of tour and make music as they please. Pretty idyllic, I would say. Even though the act at the time felt like a pretty common outfit, and even reflecting on it, bands like Joy Division were definitely doing something a bit more exciting, long-lasting, influential. I would say that the Cure still deserve to be brought up into this whole discussion when it comes to talking about post-punk. They did have an impact. I would say even like the talks that they have about city life, failed romantics and all that, reminds me a lot of the resurgence of kind of punk music when it comes to like Arctic Monkeys' debut album. I think there's a lot of similarities going on there. Even though I would argue the Arctic Monkeys' debut album, anyway, the rest of their career is maybe a bit more diverse than that, or diverse from Free Imaginary Boys. But I still do think that even though it's their most kind of run-of-the-mill in terms of sound, they still managed to have some fun with it and do some good with it as well. So when it comes to my life of listening to music, there's kind of two eras to it. There's pre-Cure and then there's post-Cure. Pretty good genre names maybe as well. But if it weren't for the fact I went over to my aunt's one day and she handed me over the Cure's greatest hits, I don't know, I'm thinking I have like a butterfly effect daydream go on here. I don't know what would have happened there, but in 2015 I made more of an active effort to actually like listen to them, to get to grips with their sound. Went into my local record shop, saw they had Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, which I'm just going to call Kiss Me now because I'm just going to end up mumbling it the whole way through. But saw they had it, took it, and for that reason I've got just very fond memories of it, a lot of nostalgia. But all of that aside, does it hold up? Yeah, It does. It does. I'd argue that while The Top is maybe their most underrated work, all in all, Kiss Me definitely ranks amongst their most underappreciated, which might sound like a funny thing to say considering how popular it ended up being, showcasing The Cure as a commercially viable act and helping them to launch themselves successfully across the pond. While it clocks in at just over an hour and 10 minutes, the pacing of this record feels as tight as a drift on CTR when playing as per. Kiss Me follows a strong Cure tradition of kicking things off with a fantastic opener in the form of The Kiss, a track that wouldn't go miss on something like Pornography, with its sinister guitar-fueled unease and Smith's ignored pleas for help with his tumultuous situation. As the album chugs along, it very rarely stops for a breather. Following up The Kiss, we get a pretty beefy run that stretches from Catch, easily one of the sweetest tracks Smith has ever conceived, past Just Like Heaven, all the way to arguably All I Want. So essentially 10 songs that just never falter, just a great run, and The Cure just managed to paint this picture of romance in all these really interesting ways. Just Like Heaven is just sweet, just big puppy dog eyes, just swept with love, and then you've got kind of like the sour sweat strokes of something like Torture, where Smith is kind of like enjoying it. It's a very sexual track, but almost like it's an ordeal. So again, they never kind of like let their kind of cynicism disappear either. It's a very kind of Cure take on romance, and for that reason I do feel like it's got quite a fair bit of depth to it, enough to actually like bring up when talking about it. I will admit the final third does start to feel a little bit bloated. Stuff like Shake or Shiver I do think could be more home as being a B-side, eventually got it added in on like a deluxe edition. Maybe it would be fine if it was like a 15 song Cure record, but no track is like really hard to swallow. It's just obviously a shame that it's not quite it didn't quite stick the landing that it should, but it does go to prove that the non-decaying life that The Cure managed to inject into their sound when it came to Head in the Door, it wasn't a fluke. This is like a really worthy follow-up to that sound, and yeah, for that reason it's placing kind of middle of the list. But at this point, any album from Free Imaginary Boys onwards, I don't think you should avoid it at all. So go ahead and dive right into it. Now this really says it all, that we're not even in the top 5 and I'm struggling to place both Faith and Wish, to the point where this is just going to be a really neutral intro, so that when I'm editing, if I just change it the last second, I can just save my arse. I'm super decisive. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that in a career with misery-ridden records, Faith is by far the saddest album The Cure's ever and will ever put out. Recorded during a period where each member of the band lost a loved one, the album unsurprisingly deals a lot with loss, and oftentimes it feels like The Cure are torturing themselves in a cathartic sense to relive this sadness, like on the funeral song, The Drowning Man and The Holy Hour, the latter of which literally has bell tolling littered near the climax. Or maybe it's just to distract themselves with a post-punk memory like Primary, which in some weird way feels tainted by this sorrowful demeanour, the band feeling weighed down by the guilt of being alive and pondering that maybe it would be better to die young, just while your innocence is still intact. I would say this is the weakest sibling in the established goth rock trilogy, but there's not really a discernible shortcoming that Faith possesses, because if anything, it's got pretty much everything going for it. Condensing the sorrow into 8 tight songs, Smith channeling the penmanship of someone like Edgar Allan Poe or Bram Stoker. Perhaps the only thing you could say is that when it comes to this particular flavour of The Cure, the band managed to push themselves that little bit further. In that sense, this is a great album but an equally great foundation, on top of which the boys go on to create a handful of arguable opusi, just a bunch of really good albums is what I'm trying to say. Well, it's not fair to call any Cure album the definitive one, the most important one. When you look at the rest of their career, you can nearly always follow its roots and find yourself back at Faith, no matter how sweet or happy-go-lucky they were getting. There's always this kind of side of the kind of gallows humour, the depraved, a little bit of like just morbid stuff, and when you've got kind of like Faith just being just pure kind of concentration of that, you can always just kind of like follow it back there. It kind of set The Cure on the path that they were going to follow for the next few decades. So in that sense, it's definitely kind of like the one that just set them on their way. So I wouldn't say it's the most important Cure album, but it's definitely the most significant in terms of the implications that it would go on to have. So when it comes to acts whose best work is also their most popular, there really isn't like a clear-cut formula or number. Radiohead, for example, I think their best album is, you can watch the video for that, I'm not going to tell you, but OK Computer is considered by a lot of people to be their best work, and it's also their most popular album. And then also think of Death Grips, they're probably their most popular album is The Money Store, and is also their best. So the Cure fit into that. I mean, Wish is their most popular album today. It kind of shocked me to hear that. I always thought that, I don't know, like Head in the Door would have been their most popular, because I hear a lot of those songs all the time. But I digress. Is it going to be in our case of, it's going to be free for free? It's going to be free for free is what I'm basically trying to say. And no, obviously, because we're only at number 6, you dummy. It was always going to be a struggle to follow up Disintegration, considering how cataclysmic its development was. Yet again, a Cure album pushing the band to the edge of a metaphorical cliff, only for Smith and Co to hang on by their fingernails. We've heard that a fair bit during this video. But before you ask me, we had another revolving door with members, new face of the band being Perry Belmonte. Despite all these changes and the aforementioned tumultuous nature of Disintegration, The Cure managed to retain a lot of what made them such a cult act in the 80s, and in a charismatically upbeat interview snippet, Smith labelled it as his second favourite Cure album after... We'll get into what his first one is. The songs though, how are they? In layman's terms, pretty fucking magic. We'll get the obvious out of the way. Friday I'm in Love is just pure, unadulterated euphoria, to the extent where a wee UK band called Peace, you might have heard of them, ripped it off and still managed to steal some of that magic. It's just bursting to seem that much. Lead single Hide in that same ballpark, just so pleasant that, much like the song's message, I just want to soak in every second I have to share with it though, with how floaty and ethereal it feels. I'm always left playing it again before it escapes through my fingers. And mate, anytime, it's just the eccentricity of The Cure done absolutely perfect. The muscular yet fluttery guitars giving it this air of fun that makes Wish feel so fresh, despite the fact this was the band's 9th album at this point. And who could forget Dear Old Letter to...
Robert Smith, when Elise asked you to do this gameplay, how did you respond?
I should have done more research, to be honest.
What form of communication did you use?
What?
Did you call her on the phone? Or send her an email? Or maybe you wrote something?
What? She wrote me a letter, and I wrote a letter to Elise.
There you go, you nailed it.
It's a real shame that Wish will kind of miss out on being on the top 5, and so any kind of like fresh meat, any fresh Cure meat who are thinking to themselves, I'll check out the top 5, like they might kind of miss out on it. And I would really just kind of implore you that don't think that just because it's not in the top 5 it's not worth your time, because there's Jangle Pop on here that really does rival the Smiths. I would say even kind of trumps them in a lot of ways. There's throwbacks to their kind of alt rock, gothic rock history. It really does kind of feel like a greatest hits album with fresh songs, which is not what a greatest hits album is, but it's like, it's almost like there's so much confidence in just great songwriting that it feels like one instantly. So yeah.
Remember the first time I told you I love...
Think of media's greatest trilogies. Maybe you're thinking of Lord of the Rings, maybe you're probably thinking of the OG Star Wars trilogy, or maybe you're cultured and you're gonna say How to Train Your Dragon, Toothless, Outsold, Hiccup, Slade, Yas, Queens, Yas. The Cure themselves joined this prestige group. There's 2 trilogies that most Cure fans acknowledge. The goth rock trilogy during the 80s, and another which doesn't really have a title at all, but it too shares Pornography along with Disintegration, and Bloodflowers, Smith's favourite Cure album. Released in 2000, this is just a must listen to anyone who wishes for more of The Cure's 1989 epic, operating in a similar manner, where it's just one thick fog of a mood as opposed to working as a collection of similar songs. It sounds daft, but just trust me on this, just chuck it on. and you'll just know fine well what I mean. Even Smith himself described the experience as being similar to Disintegrations, calling it really intense, emotional content, though, as I'll get into later, he didn't end up nearly killing himself in the process this time around. You'd probably not believe that wholeheartedly considering the content held within this album. There Is No If is hands down one of the most depressing songs I've ever encountered in my puff. Just don't let a simple instrumental demeanour of acoustic guitar and randomly interjected keys fool you for a second. It's daft to think that Smith himself didn't want to put this on the album originally. It just really taps into that nihilism that Smith seems to bleed out like he's got hematidrosis. Smith recounting a relationship where with each passing verse and by conjunction his life seems to fade away right in front of his eyes. This song alone is enough to justify such a high placement, but The Last Day of Summer stands out as something I would give my third nipple to hear live. With its dreamy, reverby body and Where the Birds Always Sing delivers a fairly downer message about how life's bleakest instance never seem to make more sense or become easier to process as you become older. Something that sounds fairly significant coming from Smith considering how he just began his 40s, so probably had another midlife crisis, probably had far too many by the time he was 40. Now, because I wrote down here that I was going to say how, again, this album seemed like it spelled the end for The Cure. It seems to happen all the time, like, they just seem so cursed in that regard, but critics at the time didn't like this. They called it largely uninspiring. They said it was dismissible droning for the most part. It took a huge, kind of put a huge dent on Smith's confidence, and that really frustrates me because this is just genuinely fantastic. It gets to me so much. So you know what, reviewers are done. Lizzo's right. We're gonna put you on the gulag, including myself. I'll be a martyr for this cause. I just fuck reviewers. You hurt Robert Smith's feelings. I just truly think that The Cure managed to make an album here that it's just the culmination of it. Not one gear is the most important part of it. Its whole miserable body worth is just great. It is just fantastic, and it's what pushes me to say that Cure have had a brilliant album worth listening to every decade since the 70s. Again, I can't think of an artist that's done that. So again, making records here. So whatever they drop this year, I hope it's not like a pie in the face. I hope they can release something that makes it the fifth decade in a row that they've made worthwhile music. That'd be something. So as I've said, it always feels like The Cure have just been at the brink of destruction. Robert Smith, I think at some point, I'm pretty sure, said how he treated every Cure album like it was their last and always pushing it to be a bit more creative. But at no point did it feel quite as okay, this could really be the end. Then the kind of just monstrous, savage animal that is Pornography. The dirty grim sound the band was aiming for on this album feels like it's coming from a genuine place, whether that be from the general animosity and uncertainty the band was facing at the time and in between the ranks, or just how far they were going to attain this aesthetic, going as far as recording in bathrooms to get the right acoustics. It's the kind of album that feels somewhat inhumane or like a health risk, kind of in the same way that an album like A Crow Looked at Me would just put an intense level of emotional stress on you due to the sensitivity. Pornography feels like it's coming from such a depraved side of The Cure that you would literally be risking your own life to jump through the same hoops to remake it. Basically everything that I've said is just enough to explain why I love The Cure's third album, but it is easy to see why someone would go as far as saying it's the best Cure album. 100 Years is Who Would Have Thunk It, another strong opener that firmly establishes the album's mantra of soaking in this destructive energy, and The Hanging Garden only goes to amplify the sheer gloom and doom of the album. From start to front, it is just completely and utterly cathartic, and I just strangely adore it for that. Of course, I'll have the bulls at the door for not putting this higher on the list. We're not saying that Pornography is our best stab at gothic rock, but I would just be daft for not saying it's great and giving it its due credit. I'd still get really uncomfortable listening to it. It just feels so barbaric and primal. Really weird to think that, considering, just the fact that it's, how old is it at this point? Nearly 4 decades. That's wild. So yeah, I love Pornography, and if you take this out of context, I'll sue you. The duality of The Cure is never ever understated, not in the kind of history books, and not least by me for this entire video, but when you look back at the 80s, you have Faith and you have Pornography, two of just the unhappiest albums put to wax. So how did people react, and how, both back then and now, how did people react to the fact that Head in the Door came after Pornography and became just one of the happiest and just most joyous albums that my ears have ever listened to? In the same way it's impossible to hear something like Hanging Garden and not feel like there's something threatening lurking around the corner, it's equally as difficult not to have my foot tapping or my hips gyrating to the bliss of The Cure's sixth album. That's not to say that the fantastical, imaginative side of the band doesn't toy with dread here and there, but for the most part, Head in the Door will just have you cheesing like the Cheshire Cat. In Between Days is adored by many, myself included, just due to how its lovely pace and makes you feel that you're caught in the hustle and bustle of this romance. It doesn't seem to know which way to go. Close to Me, no doubt one of the band's most popular songs, is on the surface undiluted wholesomeness from its soft keys to the hand clapping to Smith's unbridled infatuation, topped off with a panting, loved up delivery and the quirkiest of saxophones at the end. The song itself is kind of hiding I would say like a more downtrodden, pessimistic kind of message to it, but the album itself doesn't shy away from having some of its DNA consistent of classic Cure cynicism, but it still goes down just as sweetly, even if consciously listening to it with that in mind. I'm actually finding it hard not to just go in a track by track love letter to Head in the Door, but we'll keep things simple. Push has such a presence to it that the titular force it talks about makes me feel like every guitar chord, especially the beefy distorted opening one, is one punch after the other, and I'm just begging for it not to stop. The Baby Screams, easily the weirdest track of the lot, is full of cryptic non sequiturs over funky loops, Smith virtually begging to make sense out of the dreamlike scenarios he's having. Then you've got Kyoto's song with the coolest sounding Yamaha preset this side of the Pacific, and the gargantuan pile of mozzarella cheesiness that is 6 Different Ways, a song so at peace with its own purity that it made a movie scene with kids cleaning up a bathroom covered in blood kinda cute. Possibly the first Cure album that I ever loved. Head in the Door is just great, and I would probably say if you've not listened to them yet, make this the first album you listen to from them. Even though I'm going to have 2 albums or higher on here, I would say that it's got all the accessibility that made them so popular in their heyday, but it doesn't water down any of their kind of peculiarness. It is just the best place to start, I would say. And from that point on, you can go like, oh, if you're liking like the weirdness a bit more, then maybe you'll go listen to Pornography. And maybe you're like more of the poppy side, then you'll kind of listen to something like Wish or Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. So yeah, a really good starting point. Though we've only got 2 more albums to go. Which one's gonna trump it? Is it gonna be Disintegration or is it gonna be 17 Seconds? I'll let you think about that just now. I'm gonna have a drink of water. So by this point in the video, I would say I've had a range of takes. I've had some cold ones where I've basically said, hey, that good album, it's good. I've also had some other takes that maybe were a bit warm. You were like, oh, I'll need to let that cool down a little second. This one might be a bit piping hot, I reckon, and that's at 17 Seconds. Pretty much was The Cure perfecting the goth rock sound that they helped make popular on their first try, and that the second album they made is their second best album. They potentially nearly peaked too early. So yeah, try and stomach that just now while my voice talks. Where did I even start with 17 Seconds? An album so unlike its predecessor that I'm surprised it didn't even cause outrage back in 1980. Up to this point, I've unintentionally avoided bringing up Susie and the Banshees, but Smith's involvement with them seems to have indisputably rubbed on him creatively, as for anyone not in the know, the London-based outfit had been making some of the earliest examples of goth rock up to about a year before The Cure's debut. Smith's first stab at this under his own umbrella feels fully realised, like the work of a child who, so excited by the prospect of what this newfound sound could hold, attempts whatever he can, this giddiness translating into an album that feels cohesive, but varied enough that every chunk of it feels essential. A reflection is the ideal moody entrance music for 17 seconds, almost resembling a procession into unknown territory, which is fairly fitting for how much of a curveball this album is. Before you know it, we jump into play for today, a top 5 Cure track for myself that has all the velocity of a Free Imaginary Boys cut, but at this point it becomes evidently clear to me that Cure's work feels so much more textured and alive. The little idiosyncrasies feel like yummy garnish, Smith feels much more comfortable in his role as the album's Grim Reaper, and the bass lines are thick and tasty enough to engorge on. A Forest is just that good in the bass department that it made me want to pick up a bass guitar in the first place. I've not learned anything on it yet, but it's a thought that can. Speaking of A Forest, undoubtedly the centrepiece of the album, and at the time of recording the most played song live by The Cure, though it's impossible to say whether this rendition of the song or the best full performance is the definitive version, though I lean more to the former due to just sheer attachment. I digress, but it's no real surprise why it ranks amongst nearly every Cure's fan's favourite. It's almost visceral in how clear a picture it paints. The opening seconds alone transport me to this deep, secluded portion of a faraway reserve. No sign of life bar Mother Nature's grasp shown by sinister fog and God knows what other sounds. Is that just the wind rustling nearby trees, or is it someone or something? So Faith is like drenched in sorrow, and Pornography is just completely aggressive and just kind of baying for blood. But when it comes to 17 seconds, it's just kind of got both like the wistful otherworldness, but also has kind of like the, I don't know, kind of like the impending doom. It has just these like really soothing elements, but also the ones that just make you feel kind of on edge. It's just disturbing, and it's also just something, just kind of comforting, and it's the best album that The Cure have ever put out. Well, the best album they've put out, other than. There's no point trying to theorise what the title of The Cure's magnum opus is in reference to. Coming up to his 30th birthday, an age that he stated was past the prime for musicians, especially as idols, Smith made it his task to make his masterpiece. And while Disintegration is a horribly miserable album at points, and the way in which Smith does fall apart and become untethered is insurmountably depressing, The Cure's 1989 record is not one-to-one with the dictionary definition, as losing strength is something that is never even flirted with over the 71-minute runtime. In fact, I would go as far as saying that as cynical and sorrowful that the development of this album might be, what with the last original remnant of the OG Cure, Lol Tolhurst, being ejected and Smith being at his wit's end, Disintegration is largely a record fueled by love. Surprise, surprise, Love Song is largely simplistic in its intention, but it arguably compresses romance to a T like no other song has. It largely follows how Smith's wife makes him feel a range of positive emotions, and this is a wholesome song, there's no two ways about it, but the line I love the most about it is, whatever words I say, I will always love you, which on the one hand is obviously referring to arguments and the likes, but in the context of this album, something just clicks in my head of how this song feels like it was made for Smith, to remind himself that even if he fell flat in his face with this endeavour, he'd had this person, this comfort, who'd softened the blow and made what was already a great song improve tenfold. There's more to it than just that though. Lullaby is a creepy cut that, along with the music video, I would cite as being one of the major factors that turned Smith into the visual shorthand for the pale, distant but weirdly lovable goth boy that's been used in nearly every Tim Burton movie. Same Deep Water is used as a meeting point of the unashamedly romantic portion of this album, and the hopefully cynical side as well. A 9-minute long song about trying to be as good for the person you love as they expect from you. The metaphor used throughout is a particularly striking one, where the height of what one partner is being expected to do is represented by the death of the water, essentially endangering themselves in order to make the other half happy. The line "I will kiss you forever on nights like this" makes it apparent this is a recurring situation, making the futility and torture of it all the harder to swallow. I think it's possible to read this as a couple actively endangering themselves, essentially committing suicide in order to live together forever, which only goes to enhance the moodiness of this song. It's no real surprise why both Cure fans and Smith himself hold this song in such high regard. As happy as I am to talk about these songs until the cows come home, and how in love I am with all of them, possibly my favourite Cure track of all time also happens to be the crux of the record itself, that being the title track. There's so much I love about this song, from the simple usage of that glass smashing sound effect to how it slowly adds more lovable textures into the equation, best of all that off-kilterish percussion, but what always gets to me are just how confessional Smith gets. He's never been afraid to get gritty or emotional on a record before, and has admitted to some extent that the Cure's work is somewhat personal and autobiographical, but on Disintegration there's no character, no protagonist, no mythical creature. It's simply Smith spilling out his guts, outright stating that he will tear his own heart out to feed it to anyone that will dine down on it. Considering how this album, both in its concept and its development, could have spelled the end for the band, the line of how Smith will leave stains on the carpets and stains on the memory, a temporary item in lifelong function juxtaposed in a ruined fashion, just speaks volume. Just sheer, utter poetry. So there we have it, maybe somewhat unsurprising for a top pick, but I really couldn't understate just how great Disintegration is. There's a reason why it's just heralded as being one of the best albums of all time. There's a reason why so many of the Cure's albums are heralded as being some of the best of all time, and hopefully this has been fun to watch. Maybe some of these takes have made you go, yep, I feel validated. He thinks this other album that I think everyone should listen to should be kind of considered higher up than other ones. Maybe you're really angry and you've already left a comment down below. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you guys down below. I'm also going to be doing a stream at some point. I'll put it on screen. So pop in at that time and we'll talk about the Cure, we'll talk about a bunch of other stuff, and maybe it'll be something that, depending on how well it goes, we'll do it kind of a bit more often, to fill in those kind of points between videos, which, by the way, I'll be doing a video like I have just now, and then I'll be focusing on a Medium post, so go follow me there. It'll be down in the bio down below, and I'm just going to kind of go back and forth because I've missed writing, but I still love making videos, so I'm just going to try and be a bit kind of lenient on myself, but also kind of put some kind of pressure on myself to kind of be a bit more sort of kind of dedicated to both as opposed to favouring one over the other. But yeah, I need to say that the Cure are just such an important band to so many people. They have felt like a safe haven for the outsiders. Eventually got to the point that they were so kind of mainstream that, well, you're always going to get kind of the golf patter and that, and people are going to get kind of insulted for it. At least kind of made other people aware of it. Maybe kind of put people on to certain kind of subcultures that they previously were, and maybe that ended up being a comfort for them. So it basically kind of just brings this weird sense of hope to everybody that things are maybe just every bit as bad as they think it is, but the things can get better for everyone. Everyone except Anti-Liam. See you later.